MMORPGs are great. Massive virtual worlds you can explore around with your friends, having incredible adventures, fighting terrifying monsters, and finding hidden treasure. You can do everything from leading a guild into battle to just living a quiet life out in the wilds. There are so many games and so many different ways to play them. At the end of the day, the best MMO is the one you enjoy. No one game is better than any other.
Wrong! Every MMORPG ever made can be sort of objectively sorted from worst to best using a scientific method, and I've spent the last 2 months making this chart, so I can prove it.
Welcome, I'm Josh Strife-Hayes. Since starting my MMO content creation career many years ago, the most common email or message I get by far is, "Josh, why do you look like Henry Cavill from Wish?" The second is, "What MMO should I play?" Every year we get more top 10 MMO videos, and those videos are either far too similar to the previous year, or they don't agree with my subjective opinion at the time and are therefore wrong. Because of this, I've spent the last 2 months of my life creating this extremely scientific video, cataloguing every single MMORPG of any relevance and ranking them in order of their positions on other MMO videos to create
this chart. There are 250 MMORPG games on this chart, arranged by 20 years worth of data. So grab a cup of tea and settle in, because we are going to be here a while.
As usual, a big thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep this channel alive and allow me to do extremely scientific things like this. More information on how you can support at the end. Part of this video is sponsored by Gamersubs, but it's a 12-second part, so you probably won't be paying attention when it happens. For now, let's begin. The opening aggression was of course a joke, but I have still spent the last 2 months of my life creating a 48-page spreadsheet ranking 250 MMO games. But why? Well, the whole project was inspired by YouTube comments like these. It's honestly sad that the top 10 MMOs of 2016 has mostly games from years ago. There really needs to be a huge change to how these companies make MMOs. This video feels like a video from 3 to 4 years ago. You know it's bad when the list has been the same for the past 10 years. Seems like MMOs are dying. Nothing but cheap trash is coming out. I swear I've been looking at the same upcoming best MMO for 5 years now. Still mostly the same games too. The genre is really stale. And this video just shows us how dead MMOs are. I thought I would find some hidden gem, but it's all the usual suspects. The general opinion is the genre is stagnant, has been for a while. Companies are realizing players don't want to leave their home MMO for another. As an MMO is more than just a game you play, it's a culture, a personality. A world you spend so much time in, it becomes a collection of memories and part of your history. Making a new MMORPG is expensive and risky. For the same price, you could release 10 mobile games and make 10 times as much money. We don't have the release volume that we had in the mid-2000s MMO gold rush era, and the top 10 MMO list of any given year is pretty much the same as the previous few years gone by. So which top 10 list can you trust? Are they all just lists of player counts as of that specific moment with no critique of quality? Are they subjective opinions of whoever made the list? Is it a community vote or all of the above? Ultimately, they're just entertaining videos, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, the videos are subjective, they're opinions, but what if we could take all of that subjective data, cross-reference it, literary review it, compile it together, and present that compilation in an objective way? Would we discover anything about the genre? Here's the plan. Step 1. Watch over 100 top MMO list videos and read multiple best MMO articles spanning back over the last 20 years. The videos watched will be from a variety of channels, ranging from commercially successful channels with over 10 million subscribers and high production values, down to hobby channels with literally just one subscriber, making a slideshow of images on Windows Movie Maker. The articles will be from major news sites and minor blogs. Make sure to record where all of the videos and articles are in case you need to refer back to them later, because you will do. The bad news is doing this will take you the best part of 2 to 3 weeks. The good news is you don't need to do it. I've done it for you. Step 2. Establish the scoring system. For every video and article, assign points values to the games listed on that article, inverse of the position in relation to the total number of positions on that specific list. Now that sounds complicated, but it's a fancy way of saying if the list has 10 games, first place earns 10 points. Second place earns 9 points. Third place is 8, down to 1 point in 10th place. If a list had 8 games, then first place would be 8 points, second would be 7, and so on and so on. Essentially, last place on any given list is 1 point, and then you increase by 1 point for each place higher. Record every time a game appears and keep a running total of their points in a spreadsheet. Some data scientists watching this may think this is a terrible way to collect data, and they are right.
For example, the data from only one video would look like this. Game mentioned, video it's mentioned in, points based on the placing within that video. These are not the final rankings for every game in the list, just one video. Make sure you keep a detailed document of all the videos you use in case you want to cross-reference or check later. This data is pretty simple so far.
The data from 10 videos would look like this, as the videos begin to mention more games, so you need more rows, but this is still a readable chart. But then the data from 107 videos and 20 articles, spanning roughly 20 years with all the substyles within the MMO genre, would look like this. This took me several days of inputting data manually, and every single comment that says, "Why don't you use AI? You don't understand the value of art." This is my magnum opus. If you were to export this chart as a PDF, it would be 48 pages long.
If you were to then print out all 48 pages and stick them together, it would look like this. I've done this because Google Sheets cannot zoom out far enough to take a screenshot. This is the only way to visualize the amount of data there is. There are 1,000 data points on this, gathered from 20 years worth of data, featuring 250 games. Some of these games aren't even on Wikipedia, they are that niche.
Extrapolate this scoring data from all of the videos and every article. It will take you a while, but don't worry. As you can see, I've already done this too. Then step 3. When you have all this data, add up every single point a game has earned from any video or list it appeared on, and then arrange every single game in order from least points to most, thus giving you a 100% scientific, objective list of every MMORPG, scientifically ranked according to their arbitrary point value derived from the subjective combined rankings within almost every ranking video or article over the last roughly 20 years.
Doing this gives us the chart. 250 MMORPG games, some of them still alive, some dead, some never even releasing. If you are just bothered about the top game, click the timecode in the description to skip to it now. Hello everyone who clicked the timecode in the description, you're back at the start of the video. I made this, you will watch it and you will like it.
Some important notes before we get to the list. 1. Some videos don't do 1 to 10 ranking, they do tier placing, A, B, C, that sort of thing. In these cases, I awarded points based on the number of tiers. If the list had 5 tiers, then every game appearing in the top tier would earn 5 points. Then as the tiers go down, the games earn 4, 3, 2, and finally 1 point to every game in the bottom tier. 2. The videos and articles I used are a mix of top 10 best, top 10 best free, top 10 best mobile, top 10 retro, graphics, MMOs for PC, for console, for current year, action, tactical, American, European, international, going back roughly 20 years to give a variety of answers and make sure that I'm not favoring one style of MMO, time period, or console over any other.
3. I am not including any MMO-style mini-games made within larger games like Roblox. They must be standalone games. The only exception will be the Minecraft MMO Winecraft, because if I don't, the fanboys will shout at me. Again.
4. Sometimes an MMO releases, dies, and then re-releases with a different name, or it has 2 versions of itself, like Old School RuneScape and RuneScape 3. We will handle these games like this. If one game has 2 distinct versions which are justifiably different, like World of Warcraft and World of Warcraft Classic, they will count as 2 games because the top 10 lists they appear on now likely treat them as 2 games. If they are the same game with a different name, like the Secret World and the Secret World Legends, or the many versions of Bless we eventually had, they will have all their points totaled under the main game name, and I'll just mention both versions exist when we reach it on the list. 5. For each game, I will include the total number of points it scored in this system and, if I'm able to find out the information, whether it's still online or not. In the case of a tie, and there are lots of ties on this list, the ranking order will be weighted in favor of the view count of the video the game appeared on.
6. Some of the games on this list are just objectively not MMORPGs. When we reach them, I will show you the exact video they appeared in which granted them the spot on this list, and some of those original videos are worrying.
7. Some older and I think extremely important games within the MMO design process, like Habitat, Island of Kesmai, Legends of Future Past, the original Neverwinter Nights, or any of the text-based MUDs, do not appear on this list, because videos and articles simply don't mention them. As influential as something may have been at the time, this list is about the best games according to other lists, not the most important according to me. 8. One of the strangest things I discovered doing this research is the majority of top MMO videos don't actually show gameplay. They show cinematic trailers and marketing materials the game has created, because these are easier to find and simply look cooler than gameplay. But I want to show the gameplay of each game if possible. Now, some of these games aren't available anymore, but we can still see what they look like thanks to the amazing work of all the MMO content creators who came before me. So every game clip shows not only the game name, but where the footage comes from. So massive respect to all the classic MMO content creators who made this list possible.
Now, we have 250 games to get through, so instead of breaking down games in detail like I normally do, you're getting a sentence or two about general vibes, anything important it did, if it's still alive, and then we are moving on. At the end of the video, I'll answer some questions you'll likely all be having about the list. Please remember, the scores are based on the number of appearances and placings in over 100 very varied best MMO videos. If your favourite MMO doesn't appear on this list, it's nothing personal. It just means it wasn't important or popular enough to be mentioned even once in over 100 videos from the last 20 years. So I'm not saying your game is bad. The data is saying it's bad.
Right, the ultimate, scientific, objectively correct, points-based, 20-year collated data MMORPG ranking list which took months to make and will be outdated the moment the video releases. Here we go!
This is an advert for Gamer Subs. Don't bother skipping, it's only 12 seconds long. Making this video took so long I couldn't film a good advert, so here's me on the floor with the dog. Here's the product, here's 10% off. Done. 5 seconds left, we can do this. I believe in us. Okay, back to the video.
250, Meridian 59, the first 3D MMORPG released back in 1996, the grandfather of the genre, mentioned literally once in the last 15 years. That is extreme disrespect, but the future is now, old man. Despite being monumentally important, online, and still actively updated, Meridian 59 gets overlooked by MMO history. 249, Furcadia. Here's a horrifying MMORPG fact. The longest running MMORPG, literally in the Guinness Book of Records as the longest running MMO, is Furcadia, a furry role-play chat room. No real gameplay and all the stats are made up, focused on player-driven narrative, and still gets mentioned more often than Meridian 59. 248, Loom, The Power of the Dragon. I cannot find anyone who has heard of this game, let alone played it. Releasing in China in 2010 and making no impact at all in the West, so niche I cannot find when it shut down. 247, Istaria, Chronicles of the Gifted. What is it with the MMORPG landscape and the eternal war between furries and scalies? Istaria is the MMO where you can be a dragon and has some of the most disturbing fan art of any game on this list. 246, Algernon, a World of Warcraft clone which released in 2009 and shut down in 2017. It's planning a return in 2025 as a Web3 crypto game. As disgusting as that sounds, it's not the only game on this list we'll see try to do it. 245, City of Heroes, a superhero MMO launching in 2004 and shutting down in 2012, amazingly rising from the ashes in 2024 when NCSoft officially allowed the private fan server Homecoming to host the game for real. One of the few times we've seen an MMO company and a fan server work together like that. Nice one, guys. 244, Titan Reach. Described by the Lazy Peon as a third-person RuneScape, Titan Reach was a crowd-funded MMO which went through development hell, changed its name to World of Titans, ran out of funding, got more funding, then the developers got really into NFTs and the whole thing shut down in 2022, which is probably for the best. 243, Whack Fu. The pros of this game are it's a stylized, isometric, grid, turn-based, tactical MMO and still online today. The cons are it is French. 242, Free Realms, a colourful, child-friendly MMO set in the magical land of Sacred Grove, releasing in 2009 and dying in 2014. The president of Sony Online Entertainment at the time said the reason for the shutdown was, turns out kids do mean stuff to each other a lot and don't spend a lot of money. I could have saved you a lot of time, Sony, and told you that before you made an MMO. 241, Eternal Senia, generic gacha mobile battler. The data demands this game be put on the list, but as it's a stupid choice, we're going to ignore it. 240, EverQuest 3. The footage shown is not EverQuest 3 because EverQuest 3 doesn't yet exist. Announced in 2023 and expected in 2028, the sequel to one of the most important MMOs ever is on this list because of hype and speculation. So please, stop putting games which don't exist yet on top 10 MMO lists. 239, Silk Road Online, a Chinese MMO from 2005 set on the famous Silk Road trading route between China and Europe. The trifecta of trader, hunter, thief gameplay choices were focused on PvP. It's still online now, and by all respects, isn't bad. 238, Metin 2, a 2004 Eastern European MMO still extremely popular in Turkey. To this day, I get messages from people demanding I acknowledge Metin 2 as the greatest MMO of all time, and I will not. 237, Undecember, hack-and-slash action RPG like Path of Exile, but worse. 236, Gloria Victis, realistic PvP-focused medieval MMO with brutal grounded combat and high lethality, a small but dedicated player base. 235, Waven, turn-based, grid-based tactical MMO on PC and mobile, set in the same world as Dofus. Canned chat options make communication rather limited, made by the same people who made Wakfu, which means it is also, unfortunately, French. 234, Rust, base-building online survival game. Very successful game, but it's a survival RPG, not an MMORPG. It's on the list because most mainstream gaming news sites don't know the difference and keep saying it's an MMO. 233, Torchlight Frontiers, announced in 2018 and originally planned as an MMORPG set within the Torchlight franchise, it eventually got rebranded as Torchlight 3 and released as a mostly single-player RPG with multiplayer features. It now sits at mostly negative on Steam. If you've ever wondered how accurate these top 10 MMO lists are, you've just seen an MMO which doesn't exist rate higher than City of Heroes. 232, Ember. Emater, pronounced Ember apparently, is a mech vs kaiju MMO still in development. The source of much drama as early builds didn't look very good and the main dev is spending more time waging a Twitter culture war than actually making the game. 231, Master X Master, PvP MOBA League of Legends knockoff. Not an MMO, released by NCSoft in 2017 and shut down in 2018. And if you're wondering, why is a MOBA on the best MMO list? We can consult the giant chart of ultimate MMO data. We can find Master X Master on the game axis. Follow along and see this game received 1 point from video 39. We can then refer to the master list of all videos used to generate this data and see that video 39 was Game Ranks, the top 10 new MMORPGs of 2017, where Master X Master placed 10th. And that is why this video took 2 months to make. Not only did I watch all of these videos, I saved all the data so we can refer back to anomalies like this. 230, Echo of Soul, generic Korean hack-and-slash MMO where you enhance yourself with the souls of defeated enemies, launching in 2013, winning the Best MMO 2014 award at the Thailand Games Festival, then shutting down in 2015. It was revived a year later only in Korea. 229, The Repopulation, kickstarted sandbox MMO, third-person sci-fi shooter. Early access opened up in 2014, remained early access for 8 years, then shut down in 2023. We are going to see a rather strong correlation between the words Kickstarter, sandbox, MMO, and shut down. 228, Soulframe. Still in pre-alpha as of this video, Soulframe is the medieval game from the people behind Warframe. Will it be good? It will probably be like Warframe, but with less war and more soul. 227, Archlord. Made by Codemasters, the same people behind Lord of the Rings Online, Archlord released in 2005 to poor reviews, got 2 expansions, then died in 2014. The unique feature of this game was how 1 player per server could become the Archlord, which got them a castle, a unique dragon mount, and the innumerable tips of every fedora. 226, City of Steam, part Diablo, part Neverwinter Nights, part retro-futurism steampunk. City of Steam was meant to be a browser-based MMO and had a load of closed betas but then shut down in 2017. The attempted relaunch City of Steam Arcadia also died. 225, Uncharted Waters Online, naval trading game with an anime flair which uses an actual map of the world to give you a really rather massive amount of ocean to sail. Objectively bad, but me being British, the moment I learned you could invade places and trade tea, I played this for several days. Amazingly, still online. 224. Vanguard, Saga of Heroes, a 2007 MMO produced by Brad McQuaid, one of the original guys behind EverQuest. Vanguard released before it was really polished due to financial pressure, won the 2007 Biggest Disappointment Award from GameSpy, then won the Least Fun, Most Desolate, and Lamest Launch Awards in the MMORPG.com yearly awards. It changed from a subscription to free-to-play model in 2012 and then shut down 2 years later in 2014. 223. Grimm's Hollow. Not an MMO, an indie RPG literally made with RPG Maker. Has a cool art style and timing-based minigame style combat, but not an MMO. Why is this game here? Well, we can consult the chart. Grimm's Hollow received 1 point from Video 83. Video 83 is Top 30 Best Free MMORPG for PC to Play in 2024 by channel Best Game X. And surely we can trust Best Game X, as they put out a 20-minute video every single day. Only a professional could do such a thing as that. 222. Horizon Online, announced but as of yet unreleased MMO set in the Horizon franchise. Whether it ends up a full MMO or a scaled-back co-op game, we should know by 2026. 221. Hunters Arena Legends. Again, not an MMO, a match-based battle royale like Fortnite or Naraka Bladepoint. It's on the list because, check the chart, Video 72, Top 15 MMORPGs 2021 and 2022 nominated it. Interestingly, this video was made by William Wegner, a channel with literally 1 subscriber. When I say I scoured the internet to find every MMO ranking video, I mean it. 220. Realm of the Mad God, one of the more unique MMOs on the list, pixel art multiplayer bullet hell, free and surprisingly fun. Also interestingly, one of my weaker worst MMO ever episodes. In fact, I put out an updated apology video because of that, and the apology video now has more views than the video it's apologizing for. 219. Kurtzpell, anime cel-shaded action MMO from the people behind Grand Chase. Sells cosmetic underwear in the cash shop for $10 if you're into that sort of thing. 218. Riders of Icarus, Russian MMO about collecting mounts and fighting while riding them. Icarus clearly having a great time. Also requires a localized font patch, as my playthrough replaced all the text with question marks. 217. Das Tal, isometric sandbox full loot PvP MMO. Got renamed to The Exiled, then shut down in 2022. 216. Otherland. Oh, Otherland, my beloved. Otherland is an MMORPG based on the Tad Williams fantasy novels of the same name, following the story of uber-rich people who build a virtual world in an attempt to immortalize themselves as digital gods. I found it through a PC Gamer article talking about the strangest MMOs, and after playing it for an hour, the graphics, ambience, plot, and general design captivated me so much, I started my epic quest to finish it while being the only player. This journey was documented in my 10-part series, I Played the Most Insane MMO on Steam to the End. Otherland was an absolute trip, an unforgettable journey, with some of the best writing, level design, environments, and enemy design I've ever experienced in any game. The chess-themed land of 8 Squared, and the digital data corruption you play through at the end of it will stay with me forever. I have a deep personal love for Otherland. Unfortunately, the servers shut down in 2022. The game is removed from Steam, and one of the most visually stunning video games is gone forever. It lives on in our memories and in screenshots. Rest in peace, Otherland. 215. Shards Online. This project is an absolute mess. Shards starts as a crowd-funded MMO. You can still find the Kickstarter page online. Then Shards Online changes names to Legends of Aria. Then the original development company Citadel Studios gets acquired by Blue Monster Games. Then Blue Monster Games changes their name to Reaper Games. Then Legends of Aria gets removed from Steam in 2022. Then it gets relaunched on Steam as Legends of Aria Classic under the original Citadel Studios name, which is still alive but has very few players. 214. EverQuest 2. EverQuest was possibly the most influential MMORPG of all time, but the sequel unfortunately released in 2004, same year as World of Warcraft. Both games offered very similar gameplay experiences, and EverQuest 2 lost the popularity contest. Still online today though, and seeing a resurgence in popularity thanks to some fresh start servers, it limps along. And you can play as a frog, so that's cool. 213. Mortal Online. Mortal was both ambitious and niche, two things which often don't work well together. A hardcore, full loot, full nudity sandbox MMO where you can kill anyone, even NPCs. It thrived for a bit while it had enough players to sustain a player-driven narrative, and then slowly, like the unlucky NPCs within it, died. The sequel is doing better. 212. The Matrix Online. Ignoring the irony of an immersive online game based on a film about the dangers of an immersive online life, The Matrix Online released in 2005 and lasted 4 years, shutting down in 2009. Ubisoft blamed the lackluster response to the second and third Matrix films, causing a declining interest in the franchise. The Matrix was always one of those franchises that seemed ripe for a video game adaptation and could just never get it quite right. Path of Neo on the PS2 was the same. 211. Therion Saga, a retro-inspired menu-based RPG with 2D graphics and lots of long, tedious crafting chains. Released in 2013 and still going, which is respectable. Unfortunately, like Wakfu and Dofus, it is French. 210. Toontown Online, the original Toontown, an official Disney-branded, child-friendly online hangout game with light RPG elements, released in 2002 and ran for 11 years before dying in 2013. About 1 week after it shut down, the fan server Toontown Rewritten was launched and remains online to this day, with many reminders that this is not affiliated with Walt Disney and does not make any money from the game. 209. Nicer. Cute little pixel art MMO which ran into huge amounts of social media trouble when they tried justifying rather expensive microtransactions, and then legal trouble when there was an account data leak and thousands of passwords stored in plain text were stolen. Went into open beta in 2019, then almost all of the devs left the studio about 4 months later, and it slowly died. 208. Age of Wushu, Chinese martial arts inspired MMO launching in 2012, inspired by the Ming Dynasty myths and legends. The Western version of the game Age of Wulin closed in 2017, but the original Age of Wushu is still going. Graphically, it's a decade behind everything else, but mechanically, it still holds up. 207. Eden Eternal, also known as Finding Neverland Online. Eden Eternal is a cute anime-style MMO released back in 2010. It's still going. However, it announced it would stop the creation of new accounts in 2021. Then it had a sort of soft reboot, relaunching under the same name but a new company, X Legend Entertainment. It is still online, but the English translation is patchy at best. 206. Fiesta Online. I feel my original review for this game still holds up.
And not only is it a hobby horse, it's a hobby horse that clips into our character model so it looks like we've just shoved a stick up our ass. But amazingly, that's not the worst part. The worst part is the face, which blinks. They've just taken the head from a regular horse with giant blinking eyes and rammed it onto a stick. This is terrifying. If I have nightmares, this will be in them, but I've got a game to play. So with that sorted, me and my blinking horse head fly away with my magical arse stick.
205. Grand Theft Auto 5 Online. Not the first thing you think of when you think of MMORPGs, but it does kind of fit. GTA 5 Online is on the list because, check the chart, it scored 3 points from Video 67, which was Best MMOs to Main in 2021 by Shadow MMO. Overall, Shadow's list is actually fine, and while GTA is an unusual inclusion, he's not strictly wrong. The game is still online, and probably will be until it stops printing money. 204. City of Titans, an indie project from Missing World Media aiming to make the next superhero MMO. It seems that we've all collectively decided superhero MMOs are all named City of something. And this one will be using Unreal Engine 5 because that's the next buzzword in MMO development circles. Not out yet. So why is it ranked as objectively better than other games which exist and can be played right now? I don't know. Blame the data, not me. 203. Anthem. Oh, what could have been? Anthem was an online shooter MMO announced back in 2012. It was being made by BioWare, legendary studio behind games like Dragon Age and Mass Effect, so it could have been amazing. But it was also being developed by Electronic Arts, so instead it shut down 2 years after release. 202. Battleborn. Again, not an MMO. Battleborn was actually a failed attempt by Gearbox Studios to copy Overwatch, launching in 2016 and shutting down in 2020. There's actually an old Hollywood story of crazy things actor and cult leader Jared Leto did while on set as the Joker. But the most heinous one is definitely when he told the cast and crew of the film he'd bought Overwatch for everyone but had actually bought Battleborn instead. Why is this game on the list? Well, it scored 3 points from Video 32, which was top 10 most anticipated MMOs of 2016 HD by MMO Play. I guess 2016 must have been a dry year for MMO news. 201. Hearthstone. Why?
Why is Hearthstone on the list? Consult the chart. 3 points from video 29. Bring that video up and... No, free MMO station. Hearthstone is not one of the top 10 most successful free-to-play MMO games in 2015. I don't care if your video does have 614,000 views. It's wrong. But the data demands it be here, so here it be.
200 Closers Online, kicking off the top 200 with Closers, a 2.5D side-scrolling anime beat-em-up launching in 2014 in the East and 2017 on the West. Closers Online is still online and has remarkably positive reviews. 199 Acheron's Call 2. Continuing the curse of the sequels often not being as good as the originals, Acheron's Call 2 Fallen Kings launched in 2002 and died as a standalone game only 3 years later in 2005. However, in 2012 it became available to Acheron's Call 1 subscribers, remaining with the original until both of them shut down in 2017. 198 Pirates of the Caribbean Online, Disney's next attempt at an MMO. Pirates of the Caribbean Online casts you as Jack Sparrow's young protege. Releasing in 2007, 4 years after the first movie, it wasn't really riding the hype. It has standard third-person gameplay with some naval combat and shut down in 2013. Again though, the community steps in with private servers, and much like Toontown Rewritten, the legend of Pirates Online makes sure you know it's definitely not associated with Disney. They have even added their own content though, which is really cool. 197 Fallen Earth Classic, a knockoff Fallout MMO which in many ways is better than the actual Fallout MMO. Grindy but still holds a small population. I remember really liking the city designs in this game. 196 Shire, classic 3D grindfest MMO which released on Steam for about 5 minutes and then got taken down. 195 Guns. The more we advance, the more gamers seem to yearn for the past. Guns the Duel was a fast-paced Twitch gameplay PvP battle game about ranged and melee combat. And now we have games like Battleborn and Overwatch trying to emulate what Guns was, which itself was trying to emulate what Unreal Tournament or Quake was. Guns released in 2006 and shut down in 2013. Guns got bought by Mangasoft in 2016 and is on Steam but not actually available to download. The sequel Guns 2 is, but that was never as popular. 194 V-Rising. Not really an MMO. V-Rising is a hack-and-slash action game with online PvP and online co-op. A good game indeed, but with a server cap of less than 100 players, many do not consider this massive. 193 ReWorld Online. It is important to remember that this is ReWorld Online, an Albion Online-style player-driven sandbox MMO, not ReWorld Online, which is a Chinese copy of Roblox. Having the same name as another game happens surprisingly often in the MMO space. ReWorld Online, the MMO, last updated Twitter about 2 years ago, and if you click the official ReWorld Online homepage via their Instagram, you get this. So I think it's dead. 192 Wild West Online. Interesting game this because it involves known game dev Sergei Titov, and if you don't know that name after a quick dive into MMO scams, you will. Basically, Sergei is often involved with reskins, name changes, and re-releasing bad games under new companies as new games. Remember the DayZ? It's that guy. So if Wild West Online looks a lot like New Frontier, it's because they're the same game, and they're both bad. 191 Smite. Okay, who put this here? Video 29, the same video that put Hearthstone here. Will someone check on Free MMO Station and see if they know what an MMO is? 190 Kingdom Under Fire 2. This was an MMO real-time strategy hack-and-slash hybrid, planned to release on multiple platforms. Those plans were scrapped in development and instead it released on PC in 2017, only to shut down 4 years later. 189 Wayfinder. Touted as a big MMO release, Wayfinder is actually a class-based shooter which failed to live up to the MMO hype, so it re-released as a single-player shooter with 3-player co-op. Not a bad game, but a perfect example of why companies can't keep using the phrase MMO to describe every online shooter. You're setting expectations that your player base then get upset you're not meeting. 188 Monsters and Memories. This is an attempt to create a new MMO exactly like the old MMOs, similar in many ways to EverQuest, even down to the nameplates. Basically it's EverQuest, for a new generation of old gamers who want new games in the old way. Slated for a 2026 release. 187 Dragon Quest X. Dragon Quest X Rise of the Five Tribes is the cross-platform MMO entry of the long-running Dragon Quest franchise, releasing in 2011 and selling over 1 million copies by 2014. Unfortunately, the Wii U and 3DS versions will end in 2024, while the PlayStation, Switch and PC will last a little longer. 186, Enlisted. This is a squad-based World War II first-person shooter, and you might be thinking, if it's that, how is it an MMO? And that's a very good question. Let's consult the chart. The answer is because it appeared in Article 14, which means in April of 2024, Gamerant listed it as the 18th best free-to-play MMO of all time. Not best of that year, best of all time. 185, Battlestar Galactica Online. Battlestar Galactica, the rebooted TV version, is one of my favourite TV shows, and while the browser-based Battlestar Galactica Online reached over 2 million users in 3 months, it only lasted 6 short years and shut down in 2019. The frackin' toasters won. Starbuck hears nothing but the rain, so say we all. 184, LEGO Universe. If there was ever a franchise which could justifiably deliver multiverse adventures, it would be LEGO. But despite promise and decent reviews, LEGO Universe Online only lasted from 2010 to 2012 and shut down due to low revenue. 183, 12 Sky 2, another Chinese MMO about factions and territories. 12 Sky 2 released in 2008 and is still going. 12 Sky 2 Classic is even on Steam. 182, Tantra Online, a Korean MMO of little note, releasing in 2004. Big in the Philippines until those local servers closed in 2011, it is still online globally and limps along with a small but dedicated player base. 181, Rohan Online. I tried to play Rohan Online, but it kept asking me, where was Gondor when the Westfold fell? Popular in Indonesia for 12 years, it shut down in 2020. The game, that is, not Gondor, which by all accounts has never been to Indonesia and is doing fine. 180, Windcraft. I know I said no MMOs made within other games, but I feel Windcraft is a decent exception, a fully fleshed out and remarkably popular MMORPG built within Minecraft. I get about 2 to 3 emails a week from people asking me to play Windcraft, so here's a secret. I've never even played normal Minecraft. 179, Monster Hunter World. Not really an MMO. Monster Hunter World sees you teaming up with other players to go and hunt giant monsters, then heading back to town and doing it all again. Fun, yes, but the MMO aspect of this game was vastly overblown during its marketing. 178, Astelia Online. Korean MMO Astelia released in 2018 and was abandoned only 2 years later in 2020. Then a new version called Astelia Royal released in March of 2021 and shut down October of the same year. Then it relaunched as an NFT game called Astel of Atra, which thankfully shut down in 2023. 177, Twilight Spirits. Generic action MMO Twilight Spirits never got an English translation, got put on Steam, then didn't release. 176, Sky Saga. Sky Saga Infinite Isle was a Minecraft-looking sandbox MMO where each player had their own floating island. Then in 2017, production stopped and presumably all the islands fell down and everyone died. 175, Team Fortress 2. No. Just no. Why is this here? Consult the chart. Team Fortress 2 scores 5 points from video 29, which was free MMO Station. Again, top 10 most successful free-to-play MMO games in 2015. That one video has put Hearthstone, Smite, and now Team Fortress 2 on this chart. I am calling Idle, president of MMOs, and asking him to exile free MMO Station. You have lost MMO privileges. 174, Neocron. Post-apocalyptic cyberpunk first-person shooter Neocron, similar vibes to Deus Ex, released back in 2002 and was very technically impressive for the time. Extremely atmospheric, closer to a life sim than an MMO, amazingly kept online by a fan project. 173, Star Wars Clone Wars Adventures. This was an MMO set within the Clone Wars franchise, tying in with the excellent TV show. It ran from 2010 to 2014, and now a fan project has made an emulator which maintains a small player base. 172, Profane. Profane is a player-driven sandbox MMO promising all the other things every other player-driven sandbox MMO promises and using that art style which all the other player-driven sandbox MMOs use. And much like many other player-driven sandbox MMOs, it's still in production and not out yet. 171, Dragonica Online. Also known as Dragon Saga, Dragonica Online was a cutesy side-scrolling MMO from 2006 and is still online, available on Steam. 170, RF Online. Rising Force, shortened to RF Online, released in 2004, did very well with its daily chip war events between factions and has since died and been brought back several times, each time with a worse cash shop than before to milk the players. Most of the official servers shut down in 2023. 169, Night Online. One of the most popular Turkish MMOs, Night Online launched in 2004 and is still going. Available on Steam to mostly positive reviews. Generic Eastern European gameplay, but a cracking soundtrack. 168. Flyf. Flyf, or Fly for Fun, launched back in 2004 and has seen incredible success since, being translated to 10 different languages and relaunching with some differences as Flyf Universe, which is cross-platform, mobile, tablet and PC. Still online, still doing well. 167. Ark, Survival of the Fittest. You've probably heard of Ark, Survival Evolved, which launched in 2017. Well, 1 year earlier in 2016, Ark, Survival of the Fittest launched as a standalone game. It was a battle royale esport and even had a cash prize pool sometimes. It was merged into the main Survival Evolved game when it launched. Not really an MMORPG. 166. Landmark. This is an interesting one. Landmark was originally known as EverQuest Next Landmark, and it was a toolkit for players to make content for EverQuest Next, another game which wouldn't happen. But then the EverQuest Next Landmark toolkit was renamed to just Landmark and launched as a standalone game in 2016, keeping some of its player creation properties, and died only 1 year later. 165. Pax Dei, that's how it's pronounced, the developers said so, is a sandbox MMO made in Unreal Engine 5 which features such innovative and unique gameplay mechanics as crafting, building, survival stuff, maybe some PvE, possibly PvP if they're feeling spicy. Recently been hit by the is it pay to win controversy. Answer, maybe. 164. Tabula rasa. Tabula rasa is the philosophical idea of the brain being completely empty and only filled in by sensory or perceived experiences, such as data would be written onto a blank tablet, or tabula. It was also a shooter sci-fi MMORPG by Richard Garriott, the guy behind the Ultima series, releasing in 2007, going free-to-play 2 years later, and shutting down only 1 month after becoming free-to-play. 163. Raiders. Raiders is another Korean MMO launching in 2012 and being funded by a real money cash shop, so of course it was incredibly pay to win, but it still shut down in 2015 when the entire development company just sort of mysteriously vanished. It exists now on private servers. 162. Firefall. Firefall was a sci-fi shooter MMO from Red 5 Studios led by Mark Kern, one of the original guys behind World of Warcraft, now the guy trying to make Ember, the 232nd game on this list. Firefall launched in 2014 and then shut down in 2017. It is, however, most famous for spending several $1 million of its marketing budget on a real-world promotional bus which travelled around and let people play Firefall on it. More videos and social media posts have now been made about the bus than about the game. 161. Dust 514. This was a first-person shooter, and while not a standalone MMO itself, Dust 514 was connected to the MMO EVE Online. In many ways, it was a spin-off. Action in one game could affect the other. Victories, losses, trading, alliances. It was meant to be the boots-on-the-ground experience within EVE. Releasing in 2013, it only lasted 3 years and shut down in 2016, likely because the EVE players couldn't find the spreadsheet weapon. 160. Decaron. Decaron is a Korean action MMO translated into English and relaunched under the new name Two Moons. The original Decaron limps along on private servers, but they did launch a mobile version called Decaron G, which shut down in 2024. 159. Worm Online. This was a hardcore survival MMO famous for being very, very grindy. It was made by Rolf Janssen and Marcus Persson. Marcus would go on to become known as the guy who made Minecraft, and Rolf would go on to become known as the other guy who made Worm Online. 158. Shadowbane. This was a fantasy MMO launching in 2003, 1 year before World of Warcraft. It was created by a team very familiar with classic text-based multi-user dungeons, or MUDs. It hit the top 10 selling PC games at the time and was the first MMO to feature dynamic terrain. So players could destroy buildings, dig paths around mountains, but stability issues with doing this plagued the game. So in 2008, the game had a reboot, deleting all player and city data to begin again, and players didn't like this, so it never quite recovered and shut down in 2009. 157. World of Warships. World of Warships is what would happen if World of Tanks had a beach episode, a naval warfare MMO with a slower pace, freemium cash shop and lots of YouTuber adverts. If you really like the ocean or using maths to work out the exact angle of a really long-range cannon shot, you'll love World of Warships. Just be aware it has such a problem with new players being ganked. One of the most popular videos on the game is called The New Player Problem. 156. Marvel Heroes. Marvel Heroes was an isometric action MMO where you could play as famous Marvel heroes such as the ones in the Avengers, or unknown Marvel heroes such as the ones not in the Avengers. Launched in 2013 and shut down in 2017, it lasted 4 years, which was about the length of time we all really cared about Marvel films. 155. Dota 2. Why is Dota 2 on the list? Consult the chart. It was nominated by Video 29. It's free MMO station. Again, stop saying MOBAs are MMOs.
This is supposed to be a scientific video. You are ruining science. 154. Broken Ranks. This was an isometric adventure MMO where combat switched to a tactical side-by-side turn-based style, plagued by technical issues such as only the party leader being able to control every member even though they were other players, and an egregious pay-to-win cash shop saw the player base crumble quickly, still online but not doing well. 153. Adventure Quest 3D. Adventure Quest 3D takes all the side-scrolling charm of the original Adventure Quest and slaps in a third dimension, which honestly doesn't really add that much. Now, the original Adventure Quest and Dragon Fable are some of my favourite RPGs ever. The third dimension didn't really improve it for me, but it is successful and plays well cross-platform from mobile to PC. 152. Palia. This is a more chilled MMO focusing on life skills, farming, fishing, hunting, mining, and crafting. The smaller server size caused a lot of people to say Palia isn't really a massively multiplayer game, and the lack of combat meant it did struggle to find a mainstream audience. It's niche, but still online. 151. Mythos, a hack-and-slash Diablo-style MMO which launched back in closed beta in 2011. It was originally just a network and tech test for the developer's other title, Hellgate London. But Mythos saw enough success to remain online for a few years itself. It went through a few developer changes but died in 2011, then relaunched as a single-player game in 2022. 150. Dragon's Prophet. Dragon's Prophet was an action MMO launching in 2013. Players could capture a variety of dragons and use them as mounts, and the endgame was a big sandbox PvP arena. Shut down in 2020. 149. Frozen Flame, another early access survival MMO with that thick, smooth action figure art style. Frozen Flame had PvP, gathering, crafting, and all the buttons and UI elements had that modern diamond-shaped aesthetic because there was a period of time when all of game design decided to do that. 148. Shin Megami Tensei Imagine Online. Shin Megami Tensei Imagine Online, previously known as Shin Megami Tensei Imagine, previously known as Megami Tensei Online Imagine, was an attempt to make an online version of Shin Megami Tensei 9, and Shin Megami launched in 2007 and went Shin Megami Tensei offline in 2016. 147. 9 dragons. Studies have shown that 8 is not enough dragons and 10 is far too many dragons. The optimal amount of dragons for an MMORPG is 9. Due to this, 9 dragons is still online. 146. Elite Dangerous Odyssey. This was a paid expansion for the space sim Elite Dangerous, focusing on shootouts in hangars and on the planet's surface. The alpha for this was available in 2021. It went through a rough few years and was ultimately killed in 2022 because it was hard to support the main game of Elite Dangerous, and this for all consoles while also progressing the overall story. 145. Creativerse. Creativerse is a $20 Minecraft knockoff. It was originally free. If we consult the chart, we can see it's on this list because of video 62. On March 17th, 2020, channel Mr. MacWright released Top 10 Mac MMO Games 2020. And Creativerse came third on that list, so it's here because of the Mac gamers, and you know what? They're both probably really happy it's here. 144. Conqueror's Blade. Conqueror's Blade is just Western medieval dynasty warriors, a combination of tactical real-time strategy, MMO, and hack and slash. You take control of your powerful dude and mow down waves of NPCs searching for the enemy's powerful dude in castle sieges. Released in 2019 and still going. 143. Mabinogi, another cutesy Korean MMO. Mabinogi, released in 2004, did extremely well, had a console release teased, but that never actually happened, and then a recent engine upgrade shows the devs are really investing into it. And why wouldn't they? It's already made over $600 million. 142. Mad World. Let's clear something up. This is Mad World, an ultra-stylized black and white hyper-violent brawler released on the Nintendo Wii. It's 18 rated and features the voice talents of Steve Blum. This is Mad World, an ultra-stylized, in a different way, somewhat violent top-down MMO released on PC and probably doesn't feature Steve Blum. They are not the same game. And the amount of review videos I've watched talking about the Mad World MMO using the wrong footage is shocking. The Mad World MMO, released in 2024 and due to a botched release, payment issues and enemies in the game having way more health than intended, it turned new players away and shut down almost immediately. 141. Critica Online. This is an instance-based stylized MMO with button-mashing combat and most of the dev time apparently spent on the extremely realistic jiggle physics. Welcome back everyone who had this playing on a second monitor in the background. Good to have you with us. We are 141 games in, almost halfway.
140. Drakensang Online. This is a top-down Diablo-style hack-and-slash MMO launched in 2011. It is not connected to the previous Drakensang games, The Dark Eye and The Rivers of Time. It has a Metacritic score of 69 out of 100, which is nice. 139. Bloodline Champions. This again is not an MMO, it's a MOBA. Why is it here? Consult the chart. Bloodline Champions scored 8 points from Video 24, which we can find out is Top 10 MMO PC Games Best MMOs by Waterplay. No, Waterplay, Bloodline Champions is not one of the top 10 MMOs, it's a PvP MOBA which shut down in 2015. If these are the kind of videos the general gaming populace is being served, it's no wonder nobody knows what this genre actually is. 138. Dynasty Warriors Online. Dynasty Warriors Online is the Dynasty Warrior version of the Conqueror's Blade game, which was the Western version of Dynasty Warriors. Releasing in 2010, the over-the-top battler game has you mow down hordes of enemies and hunt for the strong players. Unfortunately, it completely shut down in 2022. 137. Divillion. This was described as Diablo 3 meets an MMO, and now we know what that's actually like. Divillion looks better by comparison. Action MMO which released in 2015 and shut down 3 years later. 136. Ember Sword, an open-world sandbox crafting survival PvP MMO with a player-driven economy, and we've never had one of those before. Unfortunately, it's a crypto game. 135. Last Chaos. This is a 2006 MMORPG from our favourite gaming duo Area Games and Gamergo. It is extremely grindy, and Gamergo sold the rights about a year ago, and when even Gamergo gives up on something, you know it's been milked as much as milking allows. 134. Temtem. This is a kickstarted MMO about capturing creatures then battling with them. It looks and plays exactly like Pokemon, so we all need to agree to be cool and just not tell Nintendo this exists. 133. Dragon Nest. Not Dragon's Nest, no S, just Dragon Nest. Another fast-paced Korean fantasy MMO releasing in 2010, touting itself as the world's fastest PvP, and it might be, because it's still online. 132. Forsaken World. This is a Chinese action MMO similar to Perfect World, except while that game is perfect, this one is Forsaken. A mobile version released in 2020, then all versions shut down in 2022. 131. Dungeon Fighter Online. Releasing in 2005, DFO is one of the longest-running MMOs on this list and one of the most successful franchises, with over 800 million players since launch and a revenue of over $20 billion. It is massive in the East, but could never quite make it in the West, with Western servers shutting down in 2013. 130. Shroud of the Avatar. Richard Garriott made Ultima, then a few more Ultima games, then Ultima Online, which was amazing. Then he made Shroud of the Avatar Forsaken Virtues, which proved that maybe he just got really lucky with Ultima. A hybrid single-player RPG with MMO function, Shroud of the Avatar Forsaken Virtues had player-owned and built towns, which led to garish buildings and garbled aesthetics. Famously, to raise money for this, Richard Garriott sold 5 vials of his actual blood on eBay. They shut the listings down because you're not allowed to do that, but then those 5 vials sold through the game's in-game shop. So 5 people, somewhere, could clone Richard Garriott. Please don't. 129. ArcAge 2. ArcAge 2 had a trailer, then nothing, then ArcAge Chronicles released, and we're all not sure if it is ArcAge 2 or an MMO, because advertisers use the letters MMO to mean anything remotely online. But goddamn top 10 lists just loved including ArcAge 2, so it's on this list as well. 128. Stars Reach. Stars Reach is an open-world sandbox gathering crafting MMO using that art style that they all use, but this one is sci-fi. It's promising all the things all the others promise, and it promises it will definitely release soon. Pinky promise, cross my heart and hope to die. Will it? Who knows? 127. World of the Living Dead. This is a text-based zombie survival MMO with a graphical interface. Played using menus and reading, interestingly it uses actual real-world map data for the in-game world, which was an interesting concept for the time, but it didn't have mass appeal and shut down in 2014. 126. Dungeon Runners. This was a third-person Diablo-style MMO focused on, as the name suggests, running dungeons. It was self-aware and satirical, releasing in 2007 and shutting down in 2010. You can find a few videos of people standing around saying their goodbyes as the shutdown happens, which is bittersweet. 125. Defend the Night. This was a dark fantasy indie MMO about defending yourself during said dangerous night. It somehow appeared on multiple top 10 videos despite not releasing. The last update from the devs was 4 years ago, so we can declare that it failed to defend itself and is indeed dead. 124. Granado Espada. Granado Barbado is a mid-2000s MMO with a Western European turn-of-the-century vibe where instead of controlling one character, you control three. It's a really interesting real-world time period to set an MMO in, and the group gameplay had promise, but both of them end up being wasted. It's a potion chug fest, same as all the other games of this style. 123. Saga of Leucemia. Crowdfunded, open world, survival, gathering, crafting, old school, hardcore MMORPG. All words which, when used together at best, should raise some red flags, and at worst, spell doom for your game. Kira TV has an entire series of videos explaining why Saga of Leucemia and other games like it die. Please go and watch them. 122. Overwatch. Why is Overwatch on the list? Well, consult the chart. Overwatch featured in video 32, which is MMO Play's top 10 most anticipated MMOs of 2016, and in that video, it took the top spot. If you're ever wondering how much the media care about MMO reporting, the most anticipated MMO of 2016, according to an MMO channel, was Overwatch. 121. Justice Online, an extremely graphically impressive Chinese wushu MMO. Imagine Black Desert but never actually releasing in the West. 120. Genshin Impact, one of the most successful RPGs ever, focusing on storylines, switching between a team of characters in combat with different elemental abilities and combining them together and then not eating Paimon. It's made approximately $1 Genshillion since release and will probably survive the heat death of the universe. 119. Odin Valhalla Rising. Odin Valhalla Rising is an open-world MMO set within Norse mythology. It's a mobile MMO and so of course has an autoplay and auto-battler feature, meaning if you don't want to play it, that's okay. You can watch as it plays itself, or you could, download a game you do want to play. 118. Dune Awakening, a big-budget MMO set on the desert world of Arrakis, riding the wave of successful films. It's open world, gathering, crafting, build your base, and then walk without rhythm, and you won't attract the worm. Not out yet, expected early 2025. 117. Motor City Online. The crew before the crew was the crew. Buy classic cars, race them against other people. Launched in 2001, shut down in 2003. Many consider Need for Speed World a spiritual successor, but even that went offline in 2015. 116. Repels, generic Korean MMO. Repels launched in 2006. Every major expansion it goes through is called an Epic, and amazingly, it's still online, currently on Epic 9.9. Hey, that's a rhyme. I'm a poet, and I didn't previously know this. 115. Atlas. Atlas was a pirate-themed open-world survival game about building ships and sailing the ocean blue while other players are trying to kill you, which is remarkably easy now because there aren't any other players trying to do that, because it officially shut down in 2024. 114. Fractured, a top-down Diablo-like hack-and-slash dynamic open-world sandbox PvP MMO, and my god, we've never had one of those before. The gimmick here was the karma system, which remembers bad things you do in-game and punishes you for it. 113. Worlds Adrift, a calming pirate MMO where you built an airship and sailed around, made by Bossa Studios, famous for I Am Bread and Surgeon Simulator. Worlds Adrift unfortunately drifted off and shut down in 2019. 112. League of Legends. Why is this here? Consult the chart. Video 29. Again. This video has done irreparable damage to this ranking list, and this video has 600,000 views. This is why no one knows what an MMO is. 111. Wonder. This was an interesting MMO without combat, focused on wandering around a big island, changing form between human, bird, even tree, just kind of vibing really. Launched in 2015 and shut down in 2015 when it discovered that players kind of like combat, and when you base your game around a mystery, people will just Wikipedia whatever the mystery was. 110. Core Punk, one of the newer games on the list, a top-down isometric action MMO, open world, PvP, mobile light, slower combat and way slower health regen, so combat is more calculated. Takes pride in the whole not holding your hand approach, meaning brutal early game. Let's see how long it can hold a player base for. 109. Atlantica Online. This released in 2008 and looks like a classic open-world Eastern MMO, but the overworld is based on the real world, and the combat system sends you into Final Fantasy-style turn-based fights. Originally owned by Nexon, ownership switched to the company Valve, and it is still going today. 108. Starbase. Starbase is what Yahtzee would call a dad game. Disassemble a space station, build a spaceship from the parts, learn the far too deep systems to do absolutely anything, and then try and fly away. Early access was released in 2021, and it's still in early access. 107. Aeon 2. Aeon 2 doesn't exist yet. It's on this list because other lists are so desperate for a new MMO they keep hyping up games which don't yet exist. 106. Spiral Knights, a cute top-down puzzle platformer released in 2011 and still going strong, winning Best Online Game at the 2011 Game Developer Choice Awards. It does use energy as an in-game premium currency, but it's mostly playable completely free. 105. Babylon's Fall. This is a co-op multiplayer action RPG, not an MMORPG. It released in 2022 to very poor reviews and shut down 11 months later, which must be some kind of record. Why is it on this list? Consult the chart. It scored 13 points from Video 72, which was top 15 MMORPGs 2021 and 2022, which means the video this game appeared on covered a longer time period than this game lasted for. 104. Second Life. Early MMORPGs relied on the novelty of being online chat rooms to make up for the lack of engaging gameplay mechanics, but Second Life fully embraces the chat room vibe. A virtual hangout destination with player-made worlds, player-made rooms, player-made clothes, and player-made everything, ultimately adding up to what could loosely be described as fun. Not a game as much as a culture. Even the devs remind people Second Life isn't a game, it has no conflict and no set objective, and yet is still somehow online. 103. Legend of Aria. This is the relaunch of Shards Online with enough changes to qualify as a new game. Ultimately the same core systems though. 102. Adventure Quest Worlds. Oh, Adventure Quest, my beloved. I adore this game, but it just never quite saw mainstream success. Launching in 2008 and bringing the world of Flash-based Artix games into the MMO landscape. Set in the world of Adventure Quest, but playing similar to Dragon Fable. Light-hearted and fun, and somehow still going. 101. Neverwinter Nights. Not technically an MMORPG. Neverwinter Nights is more of an RPG toolkit made for the Neverwinter game. I've made a full replay and review over on my second channel, Josh Strife Plays. But enough people have used the toolkit to make permanent, persistent online servers with unique rule sets and MMO-style gameplay, which means it's more of an MMO than some other games on this list. Plus, it is still going. Finally, we reach the top 100 MMO games as chosen by Scientific Method. Remember, if you disagree with any of this, you're disagreeing with science. Kicking off the top 100, we have Vindictus, a fast-paced action MMO released in 2010. Originally called Mabinogi Heroes, it is set in the same world as Mabinogi but focused on instant-based dungeon battles and over-the-top combat. Still online and still remarkably fun. 99. Project Ragnarok. Not to be confused with Ragnarok Online. Project Ragnarok is an action MMO based on Norse mythology. The trailer dropped in 2021 and it's still not out yet. 98. Identity. Identity was advertised as a modern-day open-world MMO with no levels and no grinding. What it actually was an overpromised scam. Go and watch Kira TV's excellent video covering the whole thing. It's insane. Perfect example of why you don't hype a game up and put it on a top 10 list until it actually launches. 97. Soul Worker Online. Soul Worker is an over-the-top, cel-shaded anime action MMO with super archetypical characters and perhaps the worst line in MMO history, one I cannot forget to this day. If you choose to play as the edgiest of edgelord protagonists, he says to the first female NPC he meets, "The female figure is a feast I couldn't bear to forego. Could we arrange a date for dinner later?" I haven't felt truly clean since playing this game. 96. Dark and Light, a 2006 MMO which died in 2008 and then returned in 2017 as a survival sandbox RPG. You could capture creatures by having players watch them for several real-world hours, which is difficult with no players. Still on Steam, still in early access, but we can safely say it's definitely dead. 95. Boundless. This is a child-friendly, chunky Minecraft-style survival MMO with open world and building, and you know the drill by now. Released in 2018, still online, but bleeding players. 94. World of Tanks. World of Tanks is like World of Warships, but with less ocean and more floor. Imagine taking Disney's Cars, but instead of cars it's tanks, and instead of Disney it's war. Advertised at you by every YouTuber, and still online. 93. Champions Online, a legally distinct superhero MMO featuring non-copyright characters such as Very Good But Not Quite Superman, Iron Guy, and Bartholomew No Parents, but his friends just call him Bat. Remarkably fun and still online. 92. Fallout 76. Taking the most popular post-apocalyptic franchise and throwing it online, Fallout 76 famously launched with no NPCs because they were convinced they didn't need them. Players would fill in all of the roles: hunters, gatherers, quest givers, shopkeepers, and enemies. This was quickly changed, however, when someone realized it was a terrible idea. A subscription service called Fallout First was added. However, they forgot to buy the web domain Fallout First, so somebody else bought it and linked it to a parody site mocking the game. Recently saw a huge player boost thanks to the success of the TV show, so it is still online. 91. Brighter Shores, the latest MMO from Andrew Gower, one of the original minds behind RuneScape. We can see Andrew just loves him some tiles. Still a new game, but in the top MMO already on account of actually existing and being quite good. 90. Age of Conan. This old MMO shows us what is best in life. A late 2000s game set in the brutal land of Hyboria, famous for allowing your character and many NPCs to be naked. An excellent opening tutorial section in Tortage leads into a vastly empty overworld. Still online, but probably won't last. 89. Dual Universe. Released in 2022, Dual Universe is a first-person sci-fi MMO all about gathering, crafting, building, and then flying around in space, asteroid mining, and then interplanetary warfare. It's just a shame that the fun bits of those are locked behind hours of the not fun bits of those. 88. Magic Legends. Magic the Gathering Legends was a very short-lived project, essentially reskinning a generic top-down Diablo-style hack-and-slash with Magic the Gathering characters and spells. However, it had almost nothing in common mechanically with the card game. Magic the Gathering Legends released into beta in 2021 and shut down only 7 months later. 87. The Division. Third-person shooter based on the Tom Clancy books. The Division released in 2016 and saw a successful sequel in 2019. The original is still online for now, but hasn't received an update in a while the second one has, so this original might not last that much longer. 86. Blue Protocol. Originally known as Project Sky Blue, this was one of the most anticipated big-budget Bandai Namco action MMOs of the last decade. But despite the massive hype, the Japanese servers will go offline in 2025, and the Western release, much to MMO Byte's chagrin, never even happened. 85. Embers Adrift, a new take on classic low fantasy. Embers Adrift seeks to capture the classic slow-paced RPG feeling in a big open world with the usual gathering and crafting elements, very grindy and very niche, and unfortunately because of its name, often getting confused between Ember Sword and Worlds Adrift. 84. Anarchy Online. This is a third-person sci-fi shooter MMORPG released all the way back in the ancient times of 2001. Going through several engine upgrades and multiple server mergers over its life, it is amazingly still online, one of the longest-running and most successful MMORPGs ever. It's even considered very positive on Steam to this day. 83. Asheron's Call. This was the third mainstream 3D MMO ever, releasing in 1999, winning the Game Industry Award for Best All-Round Game, but unfortunately always playing third wheel to the titanic battle between Ultima Online and EverQuest. Asheron's Call remained online for 17 years before shutting down in 2017. 82. War Thunder, a massive free-to-play warfare simulator with planes, ships, and tanks. Probably most famous for real players constantly leaking actual classified military documents onto the forums to prove to the devs that certain planes, ships, or tanks need to be nerfed or buffed accordingly. Which means it's possibly the only MMO on this list which might be an actual threat to the national security of literally everywhere. 81. Sea of Thieves. This game saw you and a bunch of friends take to the high seas as a jolly pirate crew, engage in thrilling boarding battles against other pirates, so load the flintlocks, question what to do with the drunken sailor, and then yo-ho and up she remains online. 80. Pirate 101, a child-friendly but surprisingly deep MMO released in 2012. Combat encounters switch to a top-down tactical grid-style minigame closer to Wakfu or Advanced Wars. It's still online, and I'm incredibly happy that it's ended up at this position on the list, because I can tell you one of my favourite pirate jokes. What did the pirate say to his mate on his 80th birthday? Aye, matey. Please like and subscribe. 79. Cabal Online, a Korean MMO released back in 2005, one of the first to use the freemium model of being free but having an actual cash shop with advantages in it, so of course it was massively pay to win. Cabal Online 2 launched in 2010 but died in 2018. The original, however, is still going strong. 78. Diablo Immortal. Do you guys not have phones? Releasing to middling reviews and extreme criticism of the egregious pay-to-win cash shop, which was even changed after release because the colours of the Eternal Crests were so predatory. Nominated for Mobile Game of the Year 2016 and thankfully didn't win because if it had, game companies would have learned the wrong lessons about game design. 77. Tibia. Releasing in 1997, Tibia is one of the longest-running MMORPGs ever. Top-down classic RPG with pixel graphics, lots of text, and the famous level 999 door which was opened for the first time in 2017. You can find YouTube videos of this. It was honestly underwhelming. Tibia is still going strong. 76. Swords of Legend Online, an MMO version of the popular Chinese TV show Swords of Legend. Lots of hype, lovely graphics, terrible Western localization, and shut down in 2023, only 1 year after its Western release. Now, when I say terrible Western localization, I mean this level of voice acting.
Why have you come?
Hey? My big brother let me come here. At the end of the duel, you landed a powerful blow on my Tai Bai and Shenmai acupuncture points. Was it not your intention that I come to the peak of Tai Bai at the appointed time?
Sword techniques are easy to learn, but beautiful jade is seldom seen. These are my handwritten notes. Study them carefully.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
75. Darkfall. This was a full loot PvP MMO released back in 2009 and shut down in 2012. The sequel Darkfall Unholy Wars released in 2013 but died only 3 years later. Fondly remembered, but never made a mainstream splash. 74. MapleStory 2. There is a frequent theme with sequels never quite doing as well as the originals. MapleStory 2 is no exception. Releasing in 2015 and bringing a blocky third dimension to the popular MapleStory franchise, it lasted only 5 years and proved not every game needs to be 3D. 73. Warhammer 40k Eternal Crusade. Before we had Space Marine 2, we had Eternal Crusade. Originally pitched as a massive open-world, multi-planetary 40k MMO, it got reduced in scope repeatedly and eventually became a match-based arena shooter. Still fun, and still some of the best online 40k combat we had, but fell to the taint of chaos and shut down permanently in 2021. 72. ArcAge Chronicles. This was the working title of ArcAge 2, which is already on the list. Stop changing the names of games mid-development. 71. Continent of the Ninth. Action MMO where you fight against the forces of the underworld. Released in 2012, usual Korean MMO stuff, third person, colourful, and still online. 70. H1Z1. This is a strange game because there are now 2 games with that name. H1Z1 by Daybreak Studios, which just became Z1 Battle Royale, releasing in 2018, and the H1Z1 MMORPG, which changed its name to Just Survive, releasing in 2015 and being shut down in 2018. This rating is for the now dead MMO. 69. League of Angels. My anger at League of Angels being on this list at all is only calmed by the fact it did end up genuinely in position 69, which is nice. League of Angels is anti-art. It is an abomination to game design. It is overly sexualized and underly developed. Gaming as a whole would noticeably improve if we could take the source code for League of Angels and fire it into the sun. There are 5 League of Angels games, and if you ask me which specific game this rating refers to, the answer is I don't care. 68. Life is Feudal. This was a hardcore, low-fantasy survival MMO connected to the game Life is Feudal Your Own. That one was offline. This one is an MMO, with an opening voiceover by Sean Bean. It released in 2017 and then did the most Sean Bean thing it could do and die in 2021. The game then got bought by a new company and they are trying to re-release it as a crypto NFT game. Hopefully it can just stay dead. 67. Tree of Savior, an absolutely beautiful Korean MMO. Tree of Savior, or Savior, both work, is a top-down hack-and-slash MMO with stunning art and quite good combat, but an incredibly egregious cash shop, still online and worth playing for the visual style alone. 66. Moonlight Blade, Eastern Martial Arts MMO, lovely graphics, but the PC release ties into the mobile release, so lots of loading screens and an autoplay feature, so another game that you don't have to play if you don't want to. 65. Project Gorgon, one of the more interesting MMOs on the list. Project Gorgon was made by a very small team focused on recapturing the classic, expansive, adventurous feel of games like EverQuest and Ultima. It's buy to play, which is unusual for an MMO, but has enough of a player base to be stable. And why not? You can play as a pig. 64. Tower of Fantasy. Stylized sci-fi gacha Tower of Fantasy hit the West hard with an aggressive marketing campaign and started as a decent game, but the self-titled Genshin Impact killer quickly burnt through a lot of the public goodwill it had with its extremely heavy cash shop. Still online, but losing steam. 63. Chrono Odyssey, another upcoming next-gen MMO. Chrono Odyssey is touted for a 2025 release. Enemy design looks genuinely creepy, gameplay looks smooth, but the eternal question for every new MMO ever, will it actually exist? Who knows? 62. Wizard 101, a child-friendly but actually very enjoyable and very funny MMO based around collecting magical cards and building a magical deck of spells. Wizard 101 released in 2008 and is still going strong. Smaller adventure zones with combat encounters pulling you into a magical circle of enemies and allies, and then a turn-based spell-slinging combat system. 61. Crimson Desert, an upcoming game from Pearl Abyss, the same people behind Black Desert Online. Not out yet, but apparently give Pearl Abyss enough time and they may make a desert for every single colour. 60. Skyforge, one of the stronger games on the list. Skyforge is a free-to-play action MMO with a nice fluid combat system where you are a forgotten god, and by answering the call of your dwindling faithful and completing instance-based missions for them, you regain faith and get stronger. That's really nice narrative framing for a level-up system. Releasing in 2015, it is still going. 59. Guild Wars 1. Not strictly an MMORPG, more of an online RPG with optional co-op. Guild Wars 1 is one of the best games on the list, possibly ever. Releasing back in 2005 and still online to this day, Guild Wars uses a Magic the Gathering-inspired combat system, where you have multiple skills but can only set them up while in a safe zone, and then must take on the adventure zone with whatever set you give yourself, like drawing your opening hand of cards in Magic the Gathering. Several expansions and the ability to turn your old characters into mercenary companions for your new ones make Guild Wars 1 a game that every RPG fan should try. 58. Star Wars Galaxies. Probably the game I hear people wish for the most. Star Wars Galaxies was a massive galaxy-size Star Wars life sim MMO running from 2003 until 2011. Players could take on a variety of roles, but the game was ironically killed by the later inclusion of the Jedi class. Before this, everyone did their own thing, but to become a Jedi, you must perform a load of originally secret things. However, once those things were known, everyone became a Jedi. Non-combat classes became rare, the economy slowed down, and balance went out the window, because when everyone is special, no one is. Thankfully, Star Wars never made that mistake again, and every bit of media they've released since then has been absolutely perfect. 57. EverQuest Next. This was the production name of a game not at all related to the events of EverQuest 1 or 2, so you can imagine the confusion this caused. Next would be set in a world similar to, but not actually Norath, and follow a new story. It had the Landmark creation system, which itself would break away and become the standalone MMO Landmark. We've already seen that on this list. The EverQuest Next project was discontinued in 2016. 56. Allods Online, a colourful, chunky Russian, not World of Warcraft, with your standard tab target, combat, quests and airship PvP. It's most commonly known as the game which made people play World of Warcraft. It's still online. 55. Mortal Online 2. This takes the open-world brutality of Mortal Online 1 and brings nicer graphics, a more fleshed-out crafting system, and a much bigger world. Priding itself on how unforgiving and brutal it is, Mortal Online 2 really wants the player base to live there. Focus on it, spend weeks building a base and then defend it in a bloody struggle against other people who have spent weeks amassing an army to take it over. So it's fun if you've got several weeks to spare and don't mind losing everything when you die. Very niche, but still online. 54. Chronicles of Illyria. Kira TV has an entire series of videos explaining exactly why Chronicles of Illyria shouldn't be anywhere near a top 10 MMO list. It should be a warning, a rallying cry of why you don't blindly support projects, and how trust me bro isn't a good design philosophy. Unfortunately for all the backers who believed in it, it's offline. 53. Lineage Eternal. So Lineage Eternal was the codename for a hack-and-slash action RPG which was meant to be related to the Lineage series but was then changed and renamed to Project TL, which itself was then renamed to Throne and Liberty. So Lineage Eternal and everything the videos discussing it were hoping for has changed so much the game no longer exists. We'll get to what Throne and Liberty actually became soon. 52. Trove, a procedurally generated, child-friendly pixel platformer with Minecraft-style building mechanics and actually quite impressive depth in the varied combat classes. Trove is good harmless fun and it runs on a potato, still online. 51. Tarisland. A couple of years ago, World of Warcraft actually closed down in China for a bit. During that window, Tencent released the replacement Tarisland. It's basically Chinese World of Warcraft. Same art style, same gameplay, same overall vibe. If you couldn't play World of Warcraft, which you couldn't, you could dive into Tarisland and instantly understand everything that was going on because that was literally the point of it. It has since had a global release and is still online. 50. Peria Chronicles, another anime-style sandbox MMO announced back in the mid-2010s. Peria Chronicles was meant to be a cross-platform anime-action MMO and Minecraft hybrid. It had a beta test in 2019, then Nexon cancelled the project. 49. Wildstar, another name I hear people lament the passing of. Wildstar was an aloof, quirky, zany, off-the-wall, self-aware and quite post-modern MMO set in a fantasy sci-fi retro-futuristic world. Mostly focused on very well-designed PvE bosses and more free-form movement with the parkour system, Wildstar released in 2014 and shut down only 4 years later, unfortunately taking the entire Carbine studio design company with it. 48. Final Fantasy XI. Following the massive commercial success of Final Fantasy X on the PlayStation 2, Square took their first foray into the MMO world of the Final Fantasy series with FF11. Releasing in 2002 and being the very first MMORPG ever to offer cross-platform play between the PlayStation 2 and Windows PC, it would then go on to be released on Xbox 360. Very successful, if not really annoying to actually buy and sign up for, the PlayStation 2 and Xbox servers closed in 2016. They were actually the last remaining online servers for any PlayStation 2 game. FF11 is still going today and shows no signs of shutting down. 47. PlanetSide 2. Fancy being dropped onto a massive planet-sized, never-ending PvP battle? Then PlanetSide 2 might be for you. Releasing in 2012 and still going, YouTuber The Spiffing Brit actually helped organise a battle which broke the record for single largest battle size, featuring 1,530 players and crashing the game. It resumed with a smaller but more stable amount of 1,240 players on the same server, all fighting at the same time. PlanetSide 2 is still online and will remain so until The Spiffing Brit decides to crash it again. 46. Elion. Originally named Ascent Infinite Realm and thankfully changing that name in development, Elion is a more modern action MMO released in 2020, a spiritual successor to Terra in many ways, and following the same fate as Terra, died in 2023. And you can't blame me for this one because I didn't make a video. 45. Revelations Online, a Chinese action MMO. Revelation Online released in 2015, bringing extremely over-the-top characters and classes, massive weapons, jiggle physics. Welcome back, everyone. The game was praised for its flying combat and massive PvP battles, but they couldn't save it, and it shut down in 2024. 44. Camelot Unchained, another Kickstarter MMO. Camelot Unchained was being led by Mark Jacobs, the guy behind original Dark Age of Camelot. Announced back in 2012 and focusing on realm versus realm PvP, much like the original Dark Age, it had 11 years of beta tests, update emails, and escalating promises, but still no game. To any budding game developer out there, public hype usually has a 6-month window. If you announce something, demand for it will reach fever pitch in 6 months before the public move on to something else. Camelot Unchained is now 13 years out and still no game. 43. Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Another ambitious project from EverQuest visionary Brad McQuaid is Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Unfortunately, that project involves the words Kickstarter, open world, and we need more funding, please. Pantheon has been hit by 2 major issues. The first was the saddening news of Brad McQuaid passing in 2019. The second is the constant feature creep, promising more and more and costing more and more. Meaning by the time one system even gets close to being finished, they've added another 2. Will Pantheon Rise of the Fallen have released when you watch this video? Will it release by the time I die? Will it be another scam or the best MMO in the world? Who knows? 42. Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning. I still haven't personally forgiven Games Workshop for killing Warhammer Fantasy with the End Times plot many years ago. Rest in peace, my Empire army, although the old world is scratching my rank and file itch. Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning, cleverly abbreviated to just War, was a brutal realm versus realm third-person MMO where players worked on the side of either order or destruction. Releasing in 2008 and hitting 800,000 subscribers pretty quickly, that number dropped to 300k within months, which is still respectable. However, the game, like all niche things Games Workshop decide to try and do, lost support only 5 years later. The fan server Return of Reckoning has kept the game unofficially online and is still popular to this day, so let's not tell Games Workshop about that. 41. Ultima Online. Released back in 1997, Ultima Online was another cornerstone of the genre, an isometric top-down classic RPG set in a persistent world, one of the original open-world sandbox games. Led by the enigmatic Lord British Richard Garriott's in-game persona, Ultima was brutal even for the time. The game did have high-level computer-controlled enemies and dungeons, but the focus was on player interaction and player-created narratives. Friendships formed, rivalries grew, and the game got 10 expansions expansions, with the latest in 2015. Ultima battled with EverQuest its entire life, and their rivalry pushed both of them and the genre itself to greater heights. Today, the original Ultima is still online, but the Ultima Online Outlands server, a more classic experience, is gaining popularity. 40. MapleStory. Side-scrolling Korean MMO MapleStory is a cutesy action fighter with a host of classes and loads of different skills. I personally enjoy playing as Kane, the edgiest edgelord who ever did lord over an edge. Releasing back in 2003 and generating over $3 billion in revenue so far, it's one of the most successful MMO franchises, the original even outliving its own sequel. Still online today. In fact, downloading MapleStory is one sign of a millennial midlife crisis. 39. DC Universe Online. Back to superheroes, but officially branded this time. DC Universe Online released back in 2011 and let the player create a superhero from a bunch of different choices, such as flame powers, electric powers, or the greatest superpower of all, not friendship, being born a billionaire. Still online today with a very positive rating on Steam, a healthy sized player base, and because it's a superhero franchise, even if it did die, it could just come back to life a few issues later. 38. Rift. One of the greatest fictional characters of all time, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, once said, "It is possible to make no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness, that is life." I feel this sentiment almost applies to Rift, a fantasy sci-fi hybrid MMO released in 2011. Rift started the player in the future after a cataclysmic event, then sent them back in time to prevent said event, focused on groups of players battling giant rifts in reality. The gameplay was solid, the job system was interesting, the classes were varied, the humor was on point, so what happened? Well, Rift kicked off an aggressive advertising campaign with posters saying, "We're not in Azeroth anymore." Now, throwing shade at the biggest MMO in the world at the time may have seemed smart, but what it actually caused people to do was Google "what is Azeroth" and discover World of Warcraft, then play that instead. It could never quite pick up the momentum it needed to beat World of Warcraft and was acquired by MMO graveyard GamerGo in 2018. Rift is still online, but it's a shadow of its former self. 37. Runes of Magic. Here's a personal story. Many years ago, my friends and I all played RuneScape. We would come home from school or work and all log on at the same time. Then, when the evolution of combat happened, we all left RuneScape and had to find another game. They all went to World of Warcraft. I, however, went to a similar but lesser known game called Runes of Magic, so while I have a deep personal love for this game, I can look back and admit that my friends were right and I was less right. A World of Warcraft clone through and through, Runes of Magic is a grindy pay-to-win MMO with an unfixable memory leak bug and a dwindling player base. It does, however, have a pretty cool song by the band Van Canto called Magic Taboria, so it's got that going for it. Still online, somehow. 36. Dauntless. Another not quite MMO, more online co-op action RPG, Dauntless released in 2019, so it's one of the newer games on the list. Focusing on PvE, you team up with other players, then go and hunt massive monsters. Kind of like an online version of Monster Hunter, and it very much captured that niche until Monster Hunter World released, then all the players went over there. Dauntless is still online and maintains a moderate-sized player base. 35. Destiny 2. Releasing back in 2017 on the PS4, Xbox and PC, Destiny 2 is more of a shared world first-person shooter with RPG elements and small instances that you grind again and again. Technically not a bad game, but has angered the community with several updates which actually removed content and added it to the Destiny vault. Playing any game for longer and getting less content is always a bad feeling. Still online and still successful. Just be aware the player base is passionate. And nobody hates Destiny 2 more than people who play Destiny 2. 34. The Secret World. One of my favourite games to play. How about an MMO set in the modern world focused on global conspiracies, shady government takeovers, or occult organisations? The Secret World was part traditional MMO, part augmented reality game, with in-game quests needing players to read real-world books to get references, research real-world battles or monuments, or visit hidden websites and crack real codes to progress. The gameplay was solid, voice acting was above average, the modern setting and Lovecraftian mythological narrative connection was interesting for the time, but the augmented reality aspect didn't appeal to enough people. Launched in 2012, then relaunched in 2017 as The Secret World Legends, which is still online, but the community are crying out for a single-player version to release. Because the people who do like this game really like this game and don't want to lose it if it ever does go offline. 33. Dark Age of Camelot, another one of the early MMO pioneers. Dark Age of Camelot focused on realm versus realm, player versus player clashes, set after the death of King Arthur with a more grounded, classical fantasy approach. Releasing back in 2001, the original servers could hold up to 20,000 players per world, which is still impressive to this day. However, they limited themselves to 4,000 for stability and to reduce player clutter in major cities. It was nominated for the 2002 Massive Multiplayer Game of the Year award, which it lost to The Sims Online. Dark Age of Camelot is still online today and still enjoyable until the opponent discover the amazing power of spamming bows on bridges. 32. Phantasy Star Online 2. The Phantasy Star series started back in 1987 on the Sega Master System. I still have my Sega Master System from my childhood, and I'm really showing my age here. Phantasy Star Online 1 released in 2000, then Phantasy Star Universe in 2006, but it was Phantasy Star Online 2 which really hit the mainstream. 9 starting classes, 4 more advanced ones, and unlike the original which focused on linear, randomly generated dungeons, PSO2 has a more open world focus. It made over $1 billion and is still Phantasy Star Online 2. 31. Path of Exile. We're almost 220 games into the list. Still saying Exile. Not really an MMO, but still a damn good game. Path of Exile is what happens when some guys who really like Diablo thought they could make a better Diablo, and just kind of didn't stop until they actually did, and then they kept going, and now we're all very worried about them because they cannot seem to stop making it. Released in 2013, Path of Exile has gone through time-limited events called Leagues, each league lasting a few months. I've always talked about quit moments in games. Leagues are designed as return moments. A top-down hack-and-slash RPG with about as many items as it has systems, it's still very much online. The sequel, Path of Exile 2, is in early access now. I'm enjoying it. They even sent me this cool puzzle box, which I'm sure is totally safe to open. 30. Perfect World, one of the most successful Chinese MMOs ever. Released back in 2005, Perfect World has seen 20 expansions and is still going strong today. However, there is another MMO being made called Perfect New World, and the name of the company making these games is Perfect World Games, so you'll be forgiven for getting them all a bit confused together. 29. Lineage 2. Released back in the ancient times of 2003, Lineage 2 is a prequel to the first Lineage. It then had its own prequel, Lineage 2 Revolution, released on mobile in 2016. Then it itself was remade for mobile and released as Lineage 2M in 2019. Because as much as we hate it, the future is mobile gaming. With over 100 million users since release, Lineage 2 was vastly successful and still online, actually outlasting the Western servers for Lineage 1, which was shut down in 2011. 28. Arcade Unchained. Another name change which confuses players. Arcade Unchained released in 2019 and was the same game as the original Arcade but wasn't free to play. You had to buy one of the 3 entry packs. But this was changed and now Arcade Unchained is a subscription game. Then they added the Arc Pass battle system. Then in 2023, Arcade Unchained was merged back into the original Arcade and is now just Arcade. Then 1 year later, the European and American servers shut down. So it is alive in the East only, known simply as Arcade. 27. Throne and Liberty. Here's another example of MMO name changes really messing with these results. Lineage Eternal was announced in 2011, a sequel to the Lineage franchise, but then in 2017 was rebranded to Project TL, then 5 years later in 2022 rebranded again to Throne and Liberty, and then 2 years after that released in 2024 and gained 3 million players in 1 week. A very successful launch, an Eastern hack-and-slash action MMO with stunning graphics. The recent roadmap announced one-man dungeons and 12-player raids coming soon. Hopefully Throne and Liberty has more staying power than other Eastern action MMOs on this list. 26. Dungeons & Dragons Online, one of my personal favourite designs in gaming. DDO is the best compromise between the freeform imagination of the tabletop system and the restrictions of an online video game. A classic third-person MMO released back in 2006, the level cap is remarkably low and new content gets released for all levels quite often, not just endgame. Because when you reach endgame, you're encouraged to reincarnate as a new character and a new class, gaining a small stacking buff every time you do, which allows you to level through a new starting adventure. Loads of classes and more player choice than most modern MMO games, DDO rolled a natural 20 and is still online. 25. EverQuest, the world's prettiest chat room. EverQuest, while not being the most well-known, is probably the most influential MMORPG of all time. Even if it wasn't the first and won't be the last, it codified and standardized the design we know today. It is the foundations that many others have built off. Releasing back in 1999, it is not only still online, but has received over 31 major expansions, with one every December since 2017. EverQuest now frequently launches time-locked progression servers where all players start with only the base game and expansions are unlocked for everyone every few months to recreate that feeling of progression. Or you've got Project 99, the game as it was many years ago with fewer quality of life updates. Slow, unforgiving, and immensely rewarding. I made a video called I Played EverQuest for 100 Hours, Should You? And after doing that, I have a deep respect for what EverQuest did and is still doing. 24. Warframe. Is Warframe an MMO is a question for the Tenno scholars. Is Warframe a fantastic fast-paced space ninja parkour shoot-'em-up with epic sweeping plotline is a question for the 26 million registered losers, and the answer is yes. Released back in 2013, Warframe is the gold standard for fast-paced, fluid third-person action combat with lots of jumping, and one of the games I'm glad I discovered in my worst MMO ever series because it's always fun to run some quick levels. Still online? Probably will be for a while. 23. Bless Unleashed. It's time to unleash the Bless. Announced back in 2011 and known simply as Bless, it was a third-person action combat MMO originally published by Area Games. The Western release was cancelled, so the developer NeoWiz self-published instead, renaming to Bless Online and launching in 2018. Then they decided to reboot the game and re-release as Bless Unleashed in 2020, which is just about still going. 22. Star Trek Online. Space: The Final Frontier. Made by Cryptic Studios, the same people behind Neverwinter Online, Star Trek Online is similar. You captain your own starship, travel to smaller dungeons, explore them, and kill things along the way. Launched in 2011 and still online today. It's a competent MMO, but as a classic Star Trek fan myself, I'd say it's missing the procedural competence of the next generation, or the raw sexual energy of the original series. 21. Aeon. Another NC Soft title. Aeon, the Tower of Eternity, mostly just known as Aeon, is another Korean action MMO launched in 2008. It was one of the largest MMO launches ever, over 1 million players within 4 days. And the game made $30 million in only a few months. Aeon was mostly about players joining opposing legions for battleground PvP, joined by their legion's NPC soldiers for a kind of PvPvE, and it's still online. 20. Star Citizen. Probably one of the most ambitious video games ever announced with a price tag to match. Star Citizen started as the idea of a galaxy-sized space sim and recently became the most expensive video game ever, with development costs soaring past $400 million and capital raised hitting $750 million, $750 million, eclipsing second place Grand Theft Auto 5 at a paltry $270 million. You can buy ships in the game for lots of real-world money that they promise will eventually be released because Star Citizen is still being made. And until they stop adding features, which they don't seem to be doing anytime soon, it will continue to be made forever. For the amount of money they have raised, they could have built an actual spaceship by now. Not out yet. Let's see how well this video ages. 19. Crowfall. You know what we don't have enough of? Smaller developers raising millions of dollars on Kickstarter by promising an incredibly ambitious niche new MMORPG using some new gimmick like a real-time strategy campaign, then taking said money, delaying the game, finally releasing a disappointing mess, and then shutting down only 1 year later. Anyway, here's Crowfall. 18. Terra. One of the first MMOs I apparently killed, and after getting a taste for blood, I've gone on to kill many more. Terra, the exiled realm of Arborea, was a super fast action combat MMO with over-the-top Eastern archetypes, such as the massive muscular warrior using a literal lance as a weapon, the slim and svelte lady with a gun larger than her, or just a child. Over the years, it became a mess of aesthetics. The monster and environment designs were awesomely over-the-top, but the cosmetics were garish and immersion-breaking, including a tiny police car you could drive around in or a collaboration with Attack on Titan, bringing the omnidirectional mobility gear. Terra, released in 2011, saw success, got renamed to Terra Rising in 2013 when it went free-to-play, then the PC servers shut down in 2022. It's still alive on console, and I'm sure that final remaining player really appreciates that. 17. Ashes of Creation. Another Kickstarter MMO promising to bring back the glory days. Ashes of Creation has found more success success than most through hype alone, but hype can be a fickle mistress. Raising over $3 million on Kickstarter, it promises a player-driven world-building idea. Guilds taking over cities, players defending or assaulting nodes to access their power, settlements creeping into the wilds, and roaming bands of NPC enemies potentially taking back the player territory for themselves. Announced in 2016 and having several public alphas since, it's still not released and still promising the world. 16. World of Warcraft Classic. You think you do, but you don't. But it turns out you actually did. World of Warcraft is quite a popular game, but with every expansion people say it drifts further and further from what made it great in the first place. So after Blizzard spent years telling people they don't want the game as they remembered it, they released the game as they remembered it, and players loved it and played it a lot. World of Warcraft Classic has slowly added back in the classic expansions, the Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King. Then they realized they were making the same mistakes as before, so following the same formula as EverQuest's time-locked progression servers, we're now getting WoW Classic, an endless cycle of relaunching the same game again and again and again and again and again. 15. Blade and Soul. Another classic Chinese wushu-themed action MMO, Blade and Soul released in 2012 and lets players explore a vast and rather beautiful landscape, defeating enemies with the combo system where you chain various abilities together to create new combinations. So successful it got a TV series adaptation in 2014 and then a mobile game, Blade and Soul Revolution, in 2018. Still online and still doing very well in the East. 14. RuneScape 3. Back in 2012, RuneScape released the Evolution of Combat update, changing the classic, well-loved click-and-wait combat style into a new exciting mess of abilities, cooldowns, hotbars, and status effects, and it was bad and lots of players left. But now the Evolution of Combat system has been in the game longer than it hasn't. And in 13 years, they've had enough time to build on the strengths of the system, and RuneScape 3 is actually really good. With the new necromancy skill, an epic storyline following the God Wars, and multiverse-level threats, elite skills, and loads of new locations added, playing as an Iron Man allowing you to focus on self-sufficiency through gathering and crafting, combined with the gathering and crafting reworks, RuneScape is still tainted by the mistakes of the past, but give it some time and you'll find a solid MMO. I still consider RuneScape 3 the gold standard for quests and storytelling within an MMORPG, and the Needle Skips is potentially one of the most emotional quests I've ever played. Just try to ignore the cash shop, which is difficult because my god do they make you look at it a lot. 13. Lord of the Rings Online. The MMO landscape is changing. I feel it in the water. Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it. Lord of the Rings Online is the incredibly well-made MMO set in Middle-earth. You don't play as the Fellowship, but instead hear about their journey through tales and complete quests which help them in related ways. Boasting one of the largest connected overworld maps ever, you can literally walk from the Shire to Mordor, proving Sean Bean wrong. Very new player friendly and still very online. 12. Neverwinter Online. I started my YouTube career many years ago making guides for Neverwinter Online, a third-person action MMO launching in 2013. Set in the Dungeons & Dragons Forgotten Realms universe, you likely know that place from Baldur's Gate 3. Neverwinter focused on action and combat over everything else. You'd start by helping Lord Neverember take back the city from the Nasher gang and then become a demigod-slaying hero of time. Expansion packs related to classic stories from the history of D&D took players to the Feywild, the Underdark, Icewind Dale, or the multiverse of Spelljammer. Neverwinter also released with one of my favourite MMO things ever, The Foundry, a player creation toolkit where budding game designers could make their own environments, enemies, combat encounters, and quests, set within self-contained worlds that you could teleport to, and then players could take on those quests. I've played through player-made Lovecraftian horror quests, detective noir quests, even a sci-fi spy spoof. Some of these quests are the best things I've played in any MMO, but the Foundry was eventually taken offline. Then content like dungeons and raids were removed from the main game, and then the combat was slowed down. And Neverwinter, while still fun, isn't the action MMO powerhouse it used to be. 11. New World. Amazon clearly saw how much money World of Warcraft was making in the late 2000s, so only a decade later in 2021, they released New World. Hyped up for months as the first new IP big-budget MMO from a big publisher, New World released as a buggy, broken mess. Trading and duping exploits with the auction house, infinite health exploits by just playing in windowed mode and moving the window around, and the in-game chat box not being sanitized and accepting HTML input, allowing you to run rudimentary in-game code on any other player who could see what you were typing, such as calling up the image of a sausage held in the game files, but really big, or as we discovered, displaying a tiny white box above your own character's head, but make it so large that it fills everyone else's screen. We called this the flashbang and won a lot of PvP with it. These things caused the game to release to over 900,000 players and then plummet down to around 20,000 daily, which is still a respectable number for a smaller MMO, but New World didn't want to be a smaller MMO. The exploits were eventually patched, but the damage had been done. The game has now seen a few expansions, and maybe, like RuneScape, it will redeem itself in a few years. 10. Albion Online. Kicking off the top 10 with a shining example of a player-driven PvP Kickstarter MMO actually succeeding. Albion Online is a top-down hack-and-slash MMO about grinding skills, gathering materials, crafting armor and weapons, then going into the dangerous world and fighting other players, dying because you got ganked by a team, losing everything and then starting all over again. Releasing in 2017 after a very successful Kickstarter campaign, Albion Online allows players and guilds to take control of cities, then set taxation on other players using the amenities within those cities like blacksmiths or lumber yards. The entire point of Albion Online is to be temporary. The low to mid-level resources are safe from PvP, but the rare resources exist in the dangerous zones. So build your arsenal, gather a team, go and get them, die, try again. No classes, you can switch out weapons at any time, which changes the skills you use, and a massive skill tree allows you to specialize in lots of things. It's also seen a mobile port, which is very good, and the whole game is still online. 9. EVE Online. It's time for spreadsheets in space. EVE Online is an anomaly in the MMO space. Niche yet popular, a slow-paced but incredibly quick, expansive space sim with everything from asteroid mining to more asteroid mining to sometimes even asteroid mining. And occasionally, massive multi-million-pound space battles with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of ships and the premium currency Plex genuinely being lost. EVE is a game which knows its audience and despite its immense popularity is still considered somewhat niche. It's sometimes better to read about the insane events happening within EVE than to try to play it. Alliances, treaties, spies, rivalries, betrayals, and one of the most famous in-game players being a peace negotiator between some massive factions. EVE is sometimes Star Trek The Next Gen, sometimes Battlestar Galactica, and sometimes Red Dwarf, but it's mostly spreadsheets tracking all of the above. Seriously, there's an official Microsoft Excel EVE add-on. Of course, it's still online. If it ever went offline, it would be tracked in hundreds of thousands of spreadsheets. 8. Old school RuneScape. Proving you don't need cutting-edge graphics or flashy combat, everyone's favourite childhood medieval clicking simulator sits firmly in the top 10. Old school RuneScape was Jagex responding to the player base pushing back against the modern changes RuneScape had been making recently, and Old School released in 2013. It was a snapshot of the game as it was in 2007, which is why the subreddit is called 2007scape. It has since become the most popular version of the game, gaining its own development team and brand new quests and storylines. A personal favourite, Old School RuneScape also released a mobile client in 2018 which plays exactly the same game but on mobile, so you have no excuse to have low agility. Just tap while watching Netflix, like the rest of us do. 7. Star Wars The Old Republic. Not the first attempt at a Star Wars MMO, but definitely the most successful. The Old Republic was made by BioWare and launched back in 2011. The last mainstream Star Wars film to launch before this was Revenge of the Sith in 2005, so the game wasn't exactly riding a marketing wave. Also, that was the last Star Wars film I actually saw. The Old Republic MMO takes place canonically 300 years after the events of the Knights of the Old Republic single-player RPG games. It lets players pick a class and then play through a different, fleshed out and well voice-acted story for every single class, giving it huge replayability and making the Old Republic a legitimately good RPG in its own right. Still online and still doing very well. 6. Lost Ark. The game I get the most messages to play. Lost Ark released in 2019 and came to the West in 2022. The fanboys get mad if you call it a Korean Diablo, so Lost Ark is a Korean Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. Top-down hack-and-slash RPG with gathering and crafting and absolutely no bots. Don't go to the fishing spots, just trust me, bro. Still one of the most played games on Steam. 5. Black Desert Online. Blowing people away with its character creator alone, Black Desert Online is a sandbox action MMO releasing in 2016. Players can train life skills, build houses, kill millions upon millions of enemy mobs to earn the chance to risk a small, minute upgrade to their weapon, or potentially gain a tiny boost, or break the whole thing and wish they'd paid not to do that. Black Desert Online does have PvP and is considered one of the grindiest, most pay-to-win games out there. Hardcore fans will insist it's not pay-to-win because you can pay thousands of dollars and still lose, and honestly that just sounds worse. Of course, it's still online. 4. The Elder Scrolls Online. The Elder Scrolls series is known for incredibly memorable opening lines. Excuse the gloom of Daggerfall. Wake up. I heard them say we've reached Morrowind of Morrowind. Hey you. You're finally awake of Skyrim. Or the latest. Wait, what do you mean I can't use the crafting bag without ESO Plus? Of The Elder Scrolls Online. ESO is a massive MMO set in the fantasy world of Tamriel. Releasing in 2014, you choose one of 3 factions, then play through one of 3 actually quite massive storylines. Featuring the amazing voice talents of John Cleese, Bill Nye, Kate Beckinsale, Jennifer Hale, Michael Gambon, Malcolm McDowell, and many more. The Elder Scrolls Online amazes me personally in its ability to anger the entire player base. Repeatedly, with floaty combat, egregious monetization, repetitive dungeons, have very little content made around it, and yet still maintain a massive and dedicated player base. Still very online. 3. Guild Wars 2, one of my favourite MMOs, breaking the curse of a sequel never being as good as the original. Launching back in 2012, Guild Wars 2 focuses on horizontal progression instead of vertical. Meaning once you've got the best equipment, which can happen quite quickly, it's all about collecting different varieties and looks of that equipment and focusing on your fashion, which as we all know is the true endgame. All the usual MMO things of combat, dungeons and quests, but with added jumping puzzles, rewards for exploration and legendary items which take months to craft and look very, very cool. Guild Wars 2 has a free trial the size of the entire base game, and then it's buy once, play forever. Probably one of the best value games on this list. So we're finally here. The top 2 MMOs, objectively sort of, ordered out of 250 games by a science-backed sort of system. Over 100 MMO ranking videos, all combined, multiple articles, weeks of work, and it's all come down to this, and you knew it would. Regular viewers will know my love for one of these 2 games more than the other. So I want to make it clear I did not plan this. And all the data and all the points and all the scoring can be double-checked. In second place, we have a perfect tie. When I added up all of the points from this system, both World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV scored 493 points each. In the immortal words of Brass Eye, this is the one thing I didn't want to happen. World of Warcraft, the absolute behemoth, releasing back in 2004 and being so successful it warped the genre to it. And Final Fantasy XIV, releasing in such a broken state it literally blew up its own world, started again as a realm reborn, and was still successful enough to reach the top spot again. This battle is the modern day Ultima versus EverQuest. It is pushing the genre forward faster than ever, and we're probably in for a few more years of intense rivalry. World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV are both incredible games, and they are absolutely perfectly balanced within this system. But that still means they are joint second. So the top spot of objectively the best MMO ever goes to whatever game you like playing. And it seems cheesy, but the data actually proves it. People feel they need to choose a popular MMO instead of one they personally enjoy. Content creators like me are entertainers. These videos are for entertainment purposes. We are not the arbiters of quality or the gatekeepers telling you which game you should or shouldn't play and which game you should feel bad for enjoying. Use videos like these to gather data and expand your gaming knowledge, but don't use them as an all-knowing answer to what you should do with your time. MMORPGs are long-term games, and no one wants to willingly invest in something they know will die, but millions of people have invested millions of collective hours into games which unfortunately did die. And while seeing a game you love or a place you've lived in shut down is devastating, it doesn't make the fun you had in it or the friends you made through it any less real, valuable, or meaningful to you. It is a true fact of all good narratives that not all journeys last forever. And that is okay. Sometimes you set out to save the world and you succeed, like I did with Otherland. It's bittersweet that it's gone, but we can take solace and smile in the fact that because of our collective actions, it went complete. Find a game you like and play it. Speak to others playing it, make friends, make memories, and enjoy your favourite MMORPG as best you can, because you never know when it will be gone for good.
This video genuinely did take me months to make, and I did watch all of these other videos and note down all the placings and make this massive chart. It took far too long and it was inefficient, but ultimately this is an entertainment video. Don't let content creators like me tell you which game you should like. It's your gaming time, not mine. Play what makes you happy.
Thank you very much for watching. Another massive thank you to all the amazing creators who worked tirelessly over the years to bring MMORPG content to us, and to the amazing people who support me on Patreon and Twitch, allowing me to make super long videos like this. You can support this channel from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to our Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and our Discord. And whatever MMO you play, have a great day.